Good evening, everyone. Or depending on your time zone, happy now, wherever you are around the world. I will be your host for tonight. My name is Jacob Vermeulen. I'm from Belgium, and I'm really happy you can all join tonight for an exciting webinar on a heavy subject, which is brain tumors, glioblastoma, and other types of brain tumor. And our specialist for this evening, the creator of the Sakharov protocol, is Misha Sakharov, who will tell you a lot of interesting stuff, I'm sure. So for people who are new, who don't know Misha Sakharov yet, let me give a very short introduction on who this man is. So Misha Sakharov worked for a long time as an engineer in the telecom sector and was very stressed because of this. And at a certain time in his life, he decided he wanted to change things around and wanted to work with people. And that's when he decided to work with musicians, to work with athletes. And from one thing led to another. He started to work with asthma and learned a lot about stress and the relation and stress and performance, both for musicians and athletes. And then he had a good friend who was diagnosed with glioblastoma. And then he started to connect the dots and develop his protocol. So without further ado, Misha Sakharov, good evening. Misha, are you there?
Hello, I'm here, yeah.
Good evening. How are you this evening?
I'm very good, thank you, Jacob. Thank you. It's it's very nice to not be alone on the webinar. It's and it's really great. Okay.
So maybe just start with a question. How can you do this work? It's such a heavy subject. People, are actually dying from this disease. It's a very difficult thing for many families, for many people. How on earth can you choose such a career?
Yeah, well, good question. It's as many things in our life, it happens by chance. And then you kind of follow this chance, and you very slowly you evolve into what you are. So it's not predictable very often. You just have to sense your gut, follow your gut sense, and just believe in yourself. Basically, that's what happens. When I quit my career in the telecommunications as an engineer and project manager, I also really needed to follow my gut sense, because it's not easy to stop a career, and there's money involved. There's you have to pay the rent, you have to do different things, you have children, responsibility, and all of those things, and then you learn slowly you learn. And then I started with basically with opening, crazy enough, music school, and started working with personal development through music. And then it evolved into, I understood that there's a lot of stress involved in this. In playing music and performing music, I was also working with the professional musicians with stage fright. And then I started using myself more and more as a mental trainer. Also working with athletes, as my younger son was playing football from age of 4. And then he became professional at the age of 12. So I've been coaching him, also making mental training, also for the team afterwards. It's a professional team in Denmark. And so very slowly it evolved. I started working with asthma, with exercise-induced asthma in athletes. And I got my certification, my first certification as Buteyko therapist, which is a Russian technique for optimization of breathing and also optimization of mental state, thus, and health. And then, I got my one of my friends got a diagnosis of glioblastoma, which is one of the most, aggressive brain tumors. So that's a story
Yeah.
short. Yeah.
All right. And I think when I hear you, you had multiple years to learn about the subject from different angles and then slowly roll into it. But many people who are confronted with this disease for a family member or a loved one or for themselves, it's bam, suddenly in their life. There's no preparation, there's no work beforehand around this. Many people don't think about cancer or about brain tumors at all. They don't want to think about it, and suddenly it is there. So I feel and I see on the internet there's a lot of confusion. People are in panic because it is still such a deadly disease, unfortunately. They panic, they look for regular therapies coming from the hospital, but then they also look on the internet for alternative therapies. The doctors are not always aware of these other therapies, so many people are on their own. So maybe to kickstart the subject of tonight's webinar, what would you say to somebody who has just been diagnosed with glioblastoma, who is at the beginning of the research, just had a first scan, just found out, is still in that panic, or to a family member who has a loved one in this case? What is the first thing that you would say to this person?
Well, the first thing would be you need to basically to understand who you are. And when I say that, I mean, what do I mean by that? I mean basically that the people are different, and some people can, choose an active work, very active work. They have a lot of power of will. They have inquisitiveness. They can research by themselves. And those people, maybe they could take a strong responsibility for their health and also choose, training and do a very active things. People that don't have this, strong power of will but still want to survive, basically, they need to be dedicated. And they need to research into some complementary or alternative therapies that involve, that involve some drugs, maybe like refurbished drugs, drug cocktails, maybe cannabis oil, CBD, or curcumin, a lot of different aspects. And they need to research, and they need to ask about the dosages, the people that tried it before in the forums, in the internet. Very often there's a very good forums about brain tumors and glioblastoma research and astrocytoma research. So they need to use this possibility. They need to take it very, very seriously. That's basically my my message, which is the first one. You need to take it very seriously because you need to be aware that the most aggressive brain tumors, they have something called window of opportunity. And window of opportunity, that's the period of time after the operation, maybe, or if it's not operable, then maybe after chemo and radiation. If you choose conventional therapy, where you can work, where you can be aware of your doing, you can be responsible for what you do and to planning your day, because decline in many situations, decline can be pretty steep, and that's why window of opportunity is very crucial. And basically, I want to show you that I made a graphic. I made this window about window of opportunity. As you see, that's about glioblastoma, and I call it NPMA, non-pharmacological metabolic approaches. We have some prerequisites physiological, psychological, and consciousness prerequisites. They have to be there in order for you to work. Okay, and if you cross this point of no return, that could be too late. That's basically my first thing. Yeah, Jacob.
Yeah. You speak about work. You speak about point of no return. Taking things seriously. I hear all that. My question is, so again, to this standpoint of this person just found out the disease, having to do research. I think what would be really great is if you could explain if there is a way that maybe takes people by the hand. Because when you are on your own in the internet, every person is different. So maybe a certain dosage for that person works, maybe a certain supplement for that person works. So what is your view on that?
Where to be taken by the hand is certainly a very, very good idea, and that's what all of us need. Not only when we are, we're diagnosed with a disease like that, but always. But when we are diagnosed with a serious disease, serious illness, we definitely need somebody to hold our hand and to be nudged, and also to be kind of to explain things for us. And that is why those approaches are alternative. They are alternative to the conventional. In the conventional medicine, when we follow chemo and radiation and surgery, there are some well-established ways of doing things. And here you give away your responsibility for your health. Basically, you just follow the treatments, and you endure the treatments, and so you don't need to be taken by the hands. It's only if you try to do something alternative, then there's no conventional ways of doing the alternative things. It explains, itself. So you need to be on your own. Basically, you need to be strong. You need to have a family with you, which is a very, very crucial thing. And then you need to take the decision. Do you want to heal cancer, or do you want to kill cancer? And those two things are very, very different. Jacob.
Yeah, I think many people need some more explanation on that. But before you go there is a chat, everybody, in the lower right corner. And maybe you can say something about yourself, people joining for the first time, or about your loved one, where you are with the disease, what you're doing, maybe in a short sentence, and we can see that, and then we know who is watching. Where you're from, just leave a little note, and that will help us move the conversation along and really help you understand. There is also a ask a question button where you can leave specific questions that we can go into, and that Misha will answer. So you say kill cancer or heal cancer. I think that needs some more explanation, Misha. What do you mean with that? Healing cancer? What is the difference between killing and healing?
Well, the difference is very crucial, because you see, when you're killing cancer, that's basically the conventional way. That's a strategy, conventional strategy, killing cancer, because when we are using chemotherapy and radiation, or first using surgery, those ways of working with cancer, they are highly invasive. So why they are invasive? Because it's they try to kill cancer, basically. So when we're using chemo and radiation and surgery, it's killing cancer, and it's based on the theory that cancer is a genetic disease, and when your genes are expressed, you cannot do anything. I mean, you can only kill. But there's another theory of cancer, which is called metabolic theory of cancer, where they say that cancer is a disease of metabolism. It's a disease of of cellular health. And what you can do, that's another strategy we can choose. It's a healing cancer, meaning that making your immunity strong enough and basically training your body back to homeostasis, to a natural balance. And this is not just words. There's a lot of scientific research about that. Different studies I work with, also implementing in helping people to implement in their life. But and it works. Yes, it basically works. It's not conventional yet. It's a pity. Still, there's a lot of work. There's a lot of research and development into this theory of cancer, and that's the difference. In the first one, in conventional therapies, we choose invasive methods because we believe cancer can only be treated by killing it. And in the metabolic therapies, we understand that the cancer is a metabolic disease. Basically, it's not a disease, it's a syndrome. It's a multifactorial syndrome of many, many different things that make your genes express themselves, basically force them to expression, which causes uncontrolled division of cells, which is cancer. And the function of cellular death, which is normal cell death, is not working with cancer. So there's a lot of different aspects of that. But that's the aspects of dysfunctional metabolism. And we don't kill cancer that way. We change the environment to make cancer, to make environment uninhabitable for cancer cells. Basically, hostile for cancer cells. Not cancer cells hostile for the body, but make body environment hostile for cancer cells. So cancer is forced to first diminish the rates of cellular division and then stagnate, and then tumor starts to disintegrate, basically. That's what we want to, if it answers your question.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, and when I hear this, change the cell environment, I immediately think of, well, if I read a bit on the internet, okay, let's eat a lot of vegetables, take a lot of supplementation, to make sure the balances of vitamins and minerals are good. That's immediately what I think that one should do that. Is that right, my intuition here?
Well, Jacob, yes, absolutely. Your intuition is right. It requires really understanding of what the balance is, basically. When I'm talking about the balance, I'm talking about the physiological balance in our body that is defined by our story, basically, story as humans. And so that's evolution. So it's evolutionary physiology. So what is easiest for a human body to absorb? What kind of food make it easier for human body to absorb micronutrients, minerals? Okay, what kind of foods can really stop inflammation? What kind of foods don't have anti-nutrients that promote inflammation. So, and that's why we need really sometimes to go in depth into research before we understand the real thing. And you see, vegetables are pretty good if you want to detox fast. But the problem with the vegetables and cancer is very often that cancer is the disease of inflammation, where inflammation levels are high. And there's many anti-nutrients in plants that are there, and people are unaware of that, and they are eating them, and basically they promote some levels of inflammation in the body. And the animal foods normally don't have this kind of cellular toxins, basically, that are preventing plants from being eaten by animals. That's what they are. And there's many different classes of these toxins. So what we're using something called essential ketogenic, which is not only ketogenic nutrition, but also essential means we are using only essential nutrients. And those essential nutrients are defined by our evolutionary path as humans. And they are from the animal world. Yes, if it answers your question.
Yes, one part of the question.
Yeah.
So we have the essential nutrients, and we basically skip foods that could, in the largest degree cause inflammation. But then, is it good to use supplements, boswellia, or curcumin, CBD oil, other, because CBD oil is of course more probably working towards killing cancer rather than changing the metabolic, state of the body. So, what to do with all these things? Because there is a lot of material out there that is saying people have good results with that. So what do you do with that?
Yeah, well, CBD, it's it depends very much again on your approach. What are you interested in? How is your personality? Look, if you want to use supplementation, if you want to use drug cocktails, or if you want to use CBD, that's a possibility, absolutely. But just a second. But you have to just a second. Here you go. Yeah. But you have to understand that some of them are first they have to be used in a very dedicated way. For example, CBD, you have to ramp in, right? That's how you say, very fast, and very fast to pretty high dosages. And this is not everybody can do that. So basically, you can, if you don't do it in a drastic way, you risk of just spilling your time, for not wasting your time. That's the problem. And many people don't understand this, and they are just using the precious time that they could use for something else because they are not dedicated enough to do this. Okay. So CBD, you see, we have a part of our body, for example, that we call it ECS, endocannabinoid system. An endocannabinoid system is basically something that generates endogenous cannabinoids, and they are the part of the signaling system in our body that are promoting rest and digest. Basically relaxation response instead of stress response. So we can regenerate this ECS system, and we can promote its normal function, also by exercise, by basically we call it structured exercise because we know what we're doing. We have a strategy. We have tactics. We have somebody to nudge us, and it's called a structure. And the daily structure is very crucial. That you have somebody that knows exactly what to do, have experience. So we can basically regenerate ECS system endogenously, not exogenously, which means with the end of something that is coming from the outside, as in forms of CBD oil, cannabis oil, which is a strong remedy, but it has to be dosed properly and anything. But there's always, you see, an alternative. And if you are ready to fight, if you are ready to work every day, to dedicate many hours to training, you can choose metabolic approaches. And with metabolic approaches, you can avoid a lot of side effects because you see, if you take cannabinoids, if you take CBD oil, you have to be ready to be, basically to be unfunctional for a very, very long period of time, dysfunctional or not functional at least. So you cannot train, for example. You cannot make like a multifactorial approach where you use cannabinoids and training. It's not possible because you cannot really move. You cannot really. Your psyche is not working in a proper way. For example. Okay, but if you choose cannabinoids together with some drug cocktails and you are very ready to experience severe side effects in order to kill cancer, it's possible. There's some people that basically succeeded in killing cancer that way. So it's not for, and then, yeah. So I don't know if it answers your questions,
Yeah, well,
Jacob. Yeah.
it does, Misha, absolutely. So basically, you can choose whether you want to have external things that you use and you take the side effects, but you don't have to work very hard. You can, just take that. And what is the survival rate with such drug cocktails and maybe combined with CBD oil or other supplements? Do you have some insight?
It's very, very hard to say. It's very, very hard to say. And the problem is, you see, we don't have this. But you see, the survival rates, the last 40 years we call it crusade against cancer, was declared by American government for like 40, 45 years ago. But the survival rates, overall survival rates of cancer are a little bit better, but still it's very, very low survival rates. For some cancers it's better, but for glioblastoma it didn't change really. It changed a little bit, but we're talking about very low survival rates still, and it did not really get better the last 40 years. And the problem is also, you see, with another thing that I want to mention, when you change metabolic therapies, you can also spend your time together with the person when the person is fully aware. When we're using, for example, endocannabinoid exogenous cannabis oil, when people get stoned really for months, so you cannot really communicate with people, so you cannot really make memories and live together, so you are not experiencing each other. That's another thing. And it's very hard to say how what the rates for people using alternative therapies with drug cocktails and everything. There is no such data, I'm afraid. It's very, you have to be dedicated. You have to believe in what you're doing. You have to be, that's why I say you have to be very aware of the seriousness. You have to be open. You have to be basically very, very ready to um, break the taboos. That's basically the first thing that you have to do. You have to be very ready to talk about things very openly. And the taboos are, there's a big, big taboos there. Then you have to be ready to break. Okay? And then you can know what is right from wrong for yourself, what is right for you. If you don't break the taboos, if you are in fear all the time, and that's what the biggest problem basically, that the way we talk about cancer, the way we talk about brain tumors, there's a lot of fear there, and people basically they are somehow disabled by this fear. That's one of the biggest problems that I see. If we could openly talk about things, if people could be more inquisitive, asking real questions to the doctors, asking, yeah, it would help a lot. It would help a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so low life expectancy with conventional and most alternative treatments, and then you are there saying, "Look, I have developed a protocol that can heal cancer by changing the inner state of the body and the mental state." Those are strong words, especially in this realm of glioblastoma. And I hope you don't say these words lightly. So, what are your results? Really grounded, Misha. What have you realized so far to be able to say, I have a protocol that can heal cancer?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I can tell that healing, when we're talking about healing, it's basically only possible when you use metabolic approaches. Because when you kill cancer, you don't change the environment, and very often, more often than not, it creates secondary cancers. When the cancer is killed, irradiated, or intoxicated, or how do you call that, or just operated, it creates extra inflammation. It creates something called oncotaxis, and that is create metastasis and creates movement of cancer towards inflammation. And very often, because we don't have data over 5 years survival rates, but very often those secondary cancers, they are coming after 3 or 5 years again. So we're not talking about healing there. That's why in conventional realm we are not talking about healing. In metabolic realm we can talk about healing, but it's a long-term strategy. And what my experience is, for example, my first experience with glioblastoma was that you can reverse the cancer, okay? So the tumor disappears. But then, if you don't, if you're not following exactly the same regimen of training, breathing, breathing retraining, nutritional regimen, if you are not measuring, glioblastoma is so aggressive that it comes back. Okay, and that's what was my first experience. First healing, full remission. When the hospital says that there's only there's no traces of cancer, there's only where they can see healing. There is no tumor, and then after 4 months, the new tumor is coming. And why? Because a person basically fell off the wagon, because it was was very happy and stopped doing the things. And then we have the second reoccurrence of glioblastoma. So it was my first experience. Very, very good experience, but then very, very heavy learning. Okay? And when you have a reoccurrence, it's very, very hard to heal because the person is basically not ready to do absolutely the same once again. They are tired. There's a lot of mental aspects to it, and also, psychological aspects, and also deeper a balance between love and fear that are very, very heavy to control. And then the second was very good and still is very good. It was leukemia healing. We made basically it happen with a slow process of what I'm walking with glioblastoma right now, and it was a very slow remission, and now it's getting better and better. That's the basically soon 5th year without medicine, without any kind of medication, without chemotherapy, without operation, transplant, nothing, full remission. Then we have a couple of cases now in remission of glioblastoma also. So it's not, I don't have complete cases of healing because, complete cases of healing requires many, follow-up and many years. And these several years at least, okay, working with the metabolic regimen. But then you need, if you have right measurements, if you don't fall off the wagon, then we have a very, very good chances to survive. And that's what we are using. The strict measurement, basically a strict regimen of training. And strict is a very straight word. Strict, it feels strict, but basically it's a lifestyle change, and people, they kind of it becomes a normal part of their life with time. Breathing normally, eating some things. They start feeling that it's normal after a couple of months. So there's several people now that has been on this for years, for several years for my clients that are surviving cancer. So it's possible, yeah. Jacob.
Yeah. I'd like to invite people here who are listening to ask questions, to share something in the chat or a question, to get the conversation going in an interactive fashion. So feel free to share something, where you're from, what's your situation. If you have questions so far for Misha.
Yeah, guys, please ask the question. Remember the button there, because when you ask question with this button, you can afterwards people that are watching a replay, they can go directly to this question and hear an answer. Okay, so it's a great tool. Excuse me, Jacob.
No, that's all right.
Yeah.
That's all right. So people basically, they need to change the way they breathe. They need to change the way they eat. But you also mentioned in the beginning what you learned about stress. And I think this is a topic that is far too little discussed on online forums. People are talking about all kinds of supplementation or drug cocktails or treatments here. But what did you learn about the relation between emotions, stress, and cancer, and what do you do about it in your protocol?
Okay. I would like to show you guys the this slide, and this slide shows. Let me. Yeah, this slide shows the relationship between different areas of work. that I'm working with in my protocol. You see, the mental is there on top, and then it's a part of our energy distribution. It's our resilience. And basically, a mental part is very crucial because it controls both physical resilience and immune resilience. Okay? It's our perception of the environment that shifts focus from immunity, which are, it's the that's how body protects itself from the internal threats to the external threats, which is fight and flight response or acute stress. And it's very crucial for us to know how to do that and to use our mental resilience in an appropriate way, so we can keep prioritizing our immunity. Okay, that's basically that's how it works. And this picture is from my article that I published, an article on Elsevier Publishers, about non-pharmacological metabolic approaches. That's what I'm working with. And my idea is that, you see, when we're working with human environment, optimizing nutrition, breathing, we are at the same time optimizing cellular environment. We're in the same realms of nutrition, respiration, signaling, structure, and detox, and they are matching each other. Okay? So the question was about mental side. How do we work with that? And yes, as all the other 5 areas, we also work with the mental aspect very closely, and we basically we interconnect all of those areas together. For example, when we train breathing, we connect it with a mental focus. We relax by relaxing abdominal muscles, by letting the diaphragm muscle move freely. We trigger something called vagus response. Vagus response, that's the response that prioritizes shift to parasympathetic nervous system, part of our autonomous nervous system. So parasympathetic nervous system, it's the rest and digest. Okay? And when we are learning this, and we're learning this every day in our training, when we are, I run something called, intensive boot camps. An intensive boot camp for brain tumors means that we're working every single day with exercises, with learning exercises, adjusting training regimens, measuring, and everything. And when you train breathing, connecting it with the mental state, with focus, we call it one-pointed focus, it immediately makes it a multi-purpose exercise, which means while we are optimizing our breathing to make the environment uninhabitable for cancer cells, diminishing formation of lactic acid that promotes cancer growth, and then promoting normal cellular health, but by promoting oxygenation of the cells. That's the balance between gases, what we are promoting. Then we all of a sudden can use something called meditation. And meditation is a great tool. We have 2 kinds of meditation. Generally, active meditation, which is meditation in movement, and also some people would maybe think it's not a good way of calling it, but normal meditation with closed eyes, which I call passive meditation. Okay, when you are sitting or lying down and meditating. There is possibility to do both, and we do both on our course. So we are both using active meditation in movement. We are learning how to make meditation a very strong part of all of our movement, all of our kinds of our movement, by basing it on the structure, on the body structure. Because when we have a right structure, a right position of the head, right position of the tongue, right position of the shoulders, right position of the hips, a right angle of the knees, and right position of the feet, alignment, right alignment. We allow for a relaxation to occur in movement. So, okay, the first thing is structure, then relaxation. Then we can retrain our breathing patterns when our antagonist muscle allow it. Okay, and that's how we do it in a structured way. And then we can go into the level of attention or focus, or also where we can meditate, active meditation. That's an active meditation, and we connect it also with something called radical acceptance, the fifth level. We call it 5-stage rocket. It's one of the protocols we're working with. And then we also have very strong meditation practices, which is something we acquired or made happen on our boot camp only for a month ago. We cooperate with a very strong and very experienced teacher, meditation teacher. We have also make meditations especially for breathing exercises. But meditation is very crucial, and you need to handle it. You need to handle it because, as engineer, I made a transition into this realm of healing from my career of engineer. And as engineers, we understand everything that is measurable. And that's what I used to do on the course. We connect body and mind training, and we can measure body and mind. We can measure breathing patterns. We can measure oxygenation on the cellular level, basically on mitochondrial level. Mitochondrial respiration we are measuring every day. We are measuring different we're measuring blood glucose, blood ketones. We are measuring different aspects of sleep. Also, we are measuring different aspects of relaxation. But there's a third element. This is also very crucial to talk about that. And that's what meditation can help with. And that's the balance which is very hard to talk about. It's hard to measure. It's a spiritual thing more. It's a balance between love and fear. And we have to approach this when we are dealing with very aggressive brain tumors. Because if in the situation, if we can if we can help people to go into the situation with very strong love, which is drive, healing drive for life, and low fear, which is a very, very disabling force, then we can, I believe very much that it can help us to reverse cancer, and in the long term also to cure cancer.
Well, Misha, at times when I hear you speak, I almost feel like in a Karate Kid movie, where you speak about the force of meditation, for healing, of the power of love. I think these are very beautiful things that you're saying, but something in me wants to know about the measuring, because, okay, meditation is something very thin in the air. It's
Yeah,
not very grounded for a lot of people. Albeit there is research also that shows the power of meditation. But can you give us an example of these measurements that people do every day? Because that makes the healing process much more realistic to see actually visually.
absolutely. I can just a second. Let me show you. I can show you a daily log um, of an anonymized client. Just a second. Yeah. Let's try to switch. Let's see if I can do that. All of those techniques that you need to. Just a second. Just a second. So what do we do? Bring all to front. Just for a second, I lost the tools. Oh, it's here. I can see it now.
And the reason I ask this is because I think this is so different what you're talking about than so many people out there, let alone the traditional doctors. Because in one sentence you speak about meditation and love, and in other sentence you use heavy words, mitochondrial, respiration, and this kind of stuff. So sometimes you're like the Zen master, and other times you speak like a doctor. So I think many people could be a little bit overwhelmed with this vast array of different approaches that you use in one protocol. So let's have a look at.
Well, I understand. Let's look at this one. Okay, guys, what I'm showing you right now is the progress, the chart. Just let me see if I can. Just a second. Let me see the progress chart. It's downloading a little bit slow. It's web-based, and what people do, basically, they connect every day. They put their data in, and the data generate progress. Here we go, and we can see the healing. Basically, what's happening here, you can see the progress.
I'm going to interrupt you, Misha, because Eric Clark asked the question: how does a person know if they are healing and reversing cancer? So maybe you can start answering that question, because I think you're about to do that.
Yeah, exactly. Just a second. It's very slowly. It's loading, but it happens very slowly because there's a lot of bandwidth that is used for our transmission in high definition. Okay, so what you can see here, that's the graph, that's the progress chart of a person with glioblastoma, GBM stage 4, that is inoperable. And how can we heal cancer? If you look at the column D, or if you look at the blue line shows something called control pause. And control pause, that's something we measure twice a day, in the morning and in the evening. And it's basically the way it's what I told you. It's a measurement of the rates of mitochondrial respiration. And it's very big words to put in the mouth, but basically that's what the correlation shows. That's the rates of how normally your mitochondrial respiration is happening. how close to normality. And that was defined by Dr. Buteyko for 50 years ago in Russia, and I'm certified in his method. I'm level 5 practitioner or teacher, which is the highest level. So I also teach Buteyko practitioners. And how do we know? Basically, when we cross 60 here, the level of 60, in theory, what Professor Buteyko said, that cancer cannot thrive anymore. Okay, and when we reach 70, that's what I really want people to reach. And in the normal practitioners right now, contemporary practitioners say that the level of normal health is about 40. So you see a person started week 43 last year at 14. That's the very low control pause. And that's the most of the people with cancer that I experience in my work. I experience that they are starting from 5 to 10 to 14. 14 is pretty high for cancer. And then we are training, and every week you can see that's the average results from the whole week of training. And all of a sudden, our control pause goes up. The sleep normalizes. The green and the yellow lines are showing the normalization of sleep. That's the measurements of morning pulse related to evening pulse. And then the red one is measurement of blood. It's the measurement that, if you know Professor Thomas Seyfried from Boston University, that's something called GK ratio. It's showing that that the ratio of glucose to ketones is going down. But basically what they do, they go to something called daily log, and they do these different measurements with some of the measurements like this one, column Q. It's a measurement of breathing in movement. These measurements with columns that are yellow, the measurements is measurements of sleep, evening pulse, evening control pulse, how long time you sleep, when you wake up, what is morning pulse, what is morning control pulse, what is morning maximum pulse. This is measurement. Then we use also some devices, which is Frolov device, it's breathing device. We have some measurement here. Then we have intermittent fasting we work with. We measure weight also. And then we have also something called first exercise, that's a dedicated breathing exercise that we are measuring also. And we're measuring blood. The blood measurements, as you see, that's blood glucose and blood ketones, urine ketones, also in the start. And we can see how everything changes here. So that's basically what it is. Also, we take blood tests, long-term blood tests. We see how they change. Yeah.
So basically, if I look at this, you measure much more different data and much more frequent than any conventional approach or alternative approach for that matter that I know of.
Yeah, that's why also doctors are interested in what we are doing, and scientists, and that's why I get invited now to the conferences as a speaker to present at the cancer conference, and also in breathing conferences, also conferences about nutrition, because we are trying to connect different aspects of human health into one doable approach, which is actually, you see, it is doable. We know now that it's doable, because before I used to work with one-on-one clients, and then for 4 months ago, basically, I stopped for one-on-one clients, and I transformed. I basically used my experience with one-on-one work on a group work, and it's the first time I did that in that extent, where we have many families working together from all around the world. We just had from Australia to Europe, to US, and to Canada. You know, England and Scotland and Belgium and Denmark. So we're working with different kinds of cancer, and we're using the same approach that I learned to work. I get this experience from working with one-on-one clients. So we are connecting the dots for all of those people daily. Yeah.
Just going back to Eric's question, you shortly said one of the indicators to know when people are healing cancer is that the control pulse is 60. So just for the clarity, you're referring to breathing, and how long a person can hold their breath. In very simple terms, that's the explanation. 60 seconds they can hold their breath.
Yeah, but
just how can something so simple as breathing, that we do, have such an effect on cancer and actually prohibit cancer from existing?
Yeah. And you see, what we are measuring is the ability to hold breath after normal exhalation without comfortably, without discomfort. So control pause is the ability to make a breath hold, a comfortable breath hold, without strain. So when the first strain comes, we stop measurement. So to reach 60 there, it's not easy. It's not easy, but it's doable. We know now because we have several people now that is broke this threshold. And I tried with some clients to come up to 120 in control pause, and I can show you why. You see, this is something called pulmonary ventilation criteria, and it's the old table, as you can see, a little bit yellow. And that's defined by Dr. Buteyko. When you see the normality in the middle, that's a control pause of 60. Okay? And with the control pause of 60, our immunity is strong, is normally strong. And then it can go down. You can see deep level, that's levels of disease. We have 5 levels of disease from the control pause of 5 to 10. And then we also have levels of super endurance. That's basically what I want for people. Not just reversing cancer, but I want them to experience super endurance in their life. And what is that? Pulmonary ventilation means how we breathe, how our automatical breathing patterns are. And they are controlled by the brain. What this method does is basically it changes the breathing patterns when we are not controlling it. And that's the thing. So it's basically also in sleep, also in movement, during the day, when we're not aware about breathing. It's automatic breathing patterns are changed. So why can it kill cancer? Well, because first, when people hyperventilate, and that's what all of the people beneath the line that is called normal, when it's called disease, the breathing is deep, not superficial, but deep, means that we are ventilating the lungs a lot. And the more we ventilate, the more we have production of lactic acid, the more we have dysfunctional mechanics of breathing. So the more we hyperventilate, the more we use the upper breathing muscles we call intercostals, and the less we use the diaphragm. When that happens, we stop drain of toxins from the internal organs. So our immunity stops working also, because when we use the lower muscles, the abdominal muscles, and the diaphragm that lies beneath that muscles for automatical breathing patterns, we both drain lymph, and we promote movement of toxins from the internal organs upwards, and then we also help lymph to move upwards also, okay, from the feet, basically, we have several levels of um, of the valves of what we call lymph valve and the function. And the last function, which is most crucial, that's something called diaphragmatic breathing. So when we switch from diaphragmatic breathing to intercostal breathing using chest muscles, that's what most of the people with cancer do. They hyperventilate, they ventilate lungs too much, and they use the wrong muscles. So our immunity is weakened very much. And when we learn the normal breathing patterns, when we reprogram the way our medulla oblongata, which is the part of the brainstem that regulates breathing, to accept new levels, new gas blend basically in the lungs, which is defined very much by the levels of carbon dioxide. When we stop hyperventilation, when we normalize breathing, we accept more and more carbon dioxide. And carbon dioxide is the gas that allows oxygen to come from blood to the cell. So not only we stop formation of, for example, of lactic acid that promote cancer growth, but we also promote leverage of oxygen directly to the cell, which is the end station. It's not the blood. Okay? It's to the cell, to the mitochondria. And that normalizes the metabolism of normal cells, so they stop uncontrolled division. So we work on two fronts. The first front is to make environment as uninhabitable for cancer as possible. And on the other side, we promote the environment as good as possible for normal cells so they stop mutating. So it's a win-win strategy. And we have the same win-win strategies in other 4 areas of health. We have 5 areas of health. You see, as you might remember from this, from this, we have these 5 areas of health. The 2 from energy intake, efficiency, nutrition and breathing, and 3 from energy distribution efficiency that we can work on, mental and physical and immune resilience. Yeah.
Okay,
Jacob.
I think that's a good explanation on breathing. I appreciate that because I don't read much about on the internet about the relation between breathing and cancer. On the other hand, something that is more common and very popular now is a ketogenic diet. Many people are speaking about the relation between eating ketogenic and benefits for the health in cancer. And maybe relating to Eric's question, do you also have values that you can say, well, now a person is healing from cancer based on this ketogenic diet? How are you measuring that? Can you explain a bit more about that?
Well, yes, that's the regimen, the training regimen, and the measurement regimen that we are using from the metabolic studies on cancer from Boston University, from Professor Thomas Seyfried, and it's called GK indicator, or glucose to ketone ratio. Okay, so what we are measuring, he established, he hypothesized that if we bring glucose down, and basically if we bring glucose down, it helps to stop cancer, because glucose is one of the main feeds for cancer. Okay, so if we bring a glucose down, we halve it, basically very often. It's good for stopping cancer. So we deprive cancer for its favorite fuel. And another one, it's something called ketones. And ketones, that's the way we measure the rate of keto adaptation, which is basically where we shift from where the normal cells shift from using glucose as the main energy source to using fat as the main energy source. And what it does when we do that, it creates a much more clean energy source for normal cells, and it's also it's a normal energy source, because all of us, we are born into this state of ketosis. All the children, all people, when we are born in state of ketosis, and then we get mother milk, and it also promotes the state of ketosis. So it's the natural state for human cells, metabolism. And that's what we basically come back to. And it's, and what we measure, it's some metabolites that are called ketones. It's a part of the fats. We can measure it in urine, we can measure it in blood, we can also measure it in breath. And once that we measure it first in urine, we can see we have this process of ketogenic adaptation. Because what's happening, when we are shifting from using glucose as a main energy source, because we are eating a lot of carbohydrate. And when we're eating a lot of carbohydrate, we always use glucose as a main energy source. And that is also promotes cancer. When the metabolism is gone wrong, okay? And if we diminish the use of the ratio of carbohydrates, or just take all of the carbohydrate sources out of our nutritional regimen, that's what we're doing basically on the course, then the glucose goes down, and the normal cells are forced somehow to shift into using fat as energy. So we're coming back to the most natural state for human beings, using energy as a long-term strategy. And when we do that, all of a sudden, the most of us will have around from 20 to 30 times more energy stored in our body to use. It's fantastic. And it's much more clean energy. So it does not create, for example, when we look at the energy creation in the mitochondria, inside of the cells, we have this small mitochondria that produce energy, produce ATP. It's much more clean energy production. It does not create so many inflammatory reactive oxygen species. So we don't need so many antioxidants basically anymore, because we don't create inflammation anymore. When we burn glucose, it's you can think about that as it's very unclean fuel. It's like diesel, or worse. And when you're using ketones or fats for energy, it's like high octane 100. So there's a very it's very clean energy, okay? So you don't create so many reactive oxygen species and reactive nitrogen species as when you use that are basically the particles that create inflammation and instability in the cells. And that's a part of it. And then all of our cells, they can run on ketones. All of our body cells. Only some cells in the brain can run, about between 5 and 10% of brain cells can only run on glucose. And we have always enough glucose from our own body reserves and from our body production, because our body is making glucose all the time in the liver. And this production is fine. It's very good scaled in a way that this production in the liver is 5 times more than we would normally need in our normal day. So we have a lot of glucose. So you see, glucose is not an essential macronutrient. We only have two essential macronutrients. That's fat and the protein. Animal fat and animal protein. And not plant protein, because plant proteins have the wrong, well, not never complete number of amino acids that can be matched into one good protein profile. We have 9 essential, as I remember, amino acids, and we can have all of them in one right profile when we're eating animal foods. We can never get these 9 amino acids from plant foods. We need to,
I think this is a subject for a whole webinar, this
yeah,
specific topic of
yeah,
food.
but
And
there's a lot of
yeah,
aspects here, you see, and we take them into consideration into our nudged process that we are doing in the. There's a lot of aspects in here that basically promote the making of an environment as an inhabitable for cancer cells and more habitable for normal cells. So just remember those 2 directions. They are very crucial in metabolic therapies to make it uninhabitable for cancer cells and highly habitable for normal cells to stop their division. Okay? Jacob, yeah.
yeah, very much closely related to what you are saying on the food. We have a question from Leah. So how does one make changes in their nutritional regimen if there's allergies involved to certain food or chemicals, etc.?
Excuse me, once more. Where can you see this question?
It is there in the. It's a question from Eric Clark, but he's saying Leah is asking how does. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the. There's 2 questions from Eric, because I'm looking. How does which of them? Leah is asking how does someone make changes in nutrition? Yeah. Let me start answering. Here you go. Leah is asking how does someone make changes in nutrition is if she has allergies on food, chemicals, etc. Yeah. Well, that's normally we try to make something called essential ketogenic. What I do, at least, and the idea is to avoid triggers of autoimmunity. Okay, allergies is autoimmunity is the immunity gone awry, and how to stop it? We need to stop triggers of autoimmunity. And when we're talking about chemicals, that's right. We need to stop using chemicals, stop using pills, basically. But it's a slow process. We need to, before we can stop using often pills, and you have to do it with a doctor very often. You need to see some changes in your health to the good. So you have to, when you see that your health is better, then you stop using chemicals. Sometimes it's also other kinds of chemicals that are not medicine. Just a second, I have to put myself on screen. Just a second. Yeah. So, and when we're talking about food, it's pretty easy, because you see, I learned from many people with severe autoimmunity, and I can see that very many of them react very good on elimination dietary regimen. What is elimination? When we do elimination, we take all the anti-nutrient triggers or the triggers of autoimmunity, and that's all of them are in the plant world. So basically what we're doing, we go into carnivore regimen. We're eating only meat, fat. We're eating internal organs. We're using bone broth. We connect those things together. We can also eat fish. We can eat mussels. Some people react on mussels. Some people also react on fish. That's why meat. Some people react also on eggs. Eggs are also okay for most people, but if you have autoimmunity, then you have to go into regimen and start from there. So in order to heal, because you see autoimmunity, allergies, it's very hard to heal. And in order to heal that, we need to heal the gut permeability, the permeability of the membranes in all of in all the body. Um, and we have to change the lipid content in the cell membranes, and it takes some time. In order to do that, the best way is elimination regimen, and it's to stop eating all sources of carbohydrate. There's a lot of anti-nutrients. We can make a webinar about that. It's like 26 different cellular toxins in the plants, from cucumber to avocado, all of those things that you thought was good for you. But in my experience, I found out that people only start healing after removing them. And when people have severe allergies and autoimmunity, that's the one thing that help in my experience.
Are you saying, Misha, that people at the same time heal their cancer and heal their allergies?
That's exactly what I believe, yeah. I believe that we can only heal cancer, and not kill cancer, but heal cancer. Long term, if we heal gut permeability and thus heal autoimmunity. Okay?
Okay, also on the food and that's, I think, an Icelandic name, Snowbeer.
Snæbjörn, Athils.
Yes,
yes, I'm
name.
starting answering. It's a snow bear.
So the question is about not eating, and sometimes not eating, sometimes eating. It's called intermittent fasting. Help us understand this concept.
Yeah, and you see, are you using intermittent fasting all year? Yeah, with the small exceptions. And intermittent fasting is another part of healing that promotes another part of healing. And there's a lot of connections here. You see connections with sleep, with our ability to regenerate cells into sleep, and to promote a certain level of autophagy, different kinds of autophagy, which is basically how the cell use for energy the internal components of the cell, and that is the cell. That's how the cellular detox works. It's called autophagy, and we promote it by intermittent fasting also. And intermittent fasting is when you have a defined nutritional window of some hours. Normally, we start eating at 7 o'clock in the morning and stop eating maybe at 10 o'clock in the morning when we snack on something. And this is very, very normal. And people eat like from 6 to 10 times a day. It's totally crazy, because their hormones that regulates satiety and hunger are dysregulated. And it's a part of metabolic syndrome. That's leptin and ghrelin resistance, leptin resistance. We heard about insulin resistance, but before insulin resistance, we also have something called leptin resistance. And how do we change it? How do we change metabolic syndrome? Intermittent fasting is a part of it. That's how we normalize the hormonal regulation, when we stop leptin resistance, normalize leptin sensitivity. Intermittent fasting, when we diminish this window of eating window to from 7 to 10, it's 15 hours. That's a lot, and you can put like 10 times 10 meals there. So we diminish it from maybe first from 7 to 6, and maybe then from 12 to 6, and then maybe from 12 to 4. It depends on what you want to. If you are healing cancer, you are doing it together with a ketogenic regimen, and it's very easy to do intermittent fasting and ketogenic regimen. And then you can choose how much you want to do it. It depends on your needs. If it's cancer, you probably really want to be very, very straight here and do intermittent fasting all the time. And it's very easy because you are not hungry anymore. So keeping an intermittent fasting window at 6 hours or something from 12 to 6 is pretty easy. And that's what everybody on our course does. And if it's done all year, well, absolutely, because it's not a problem. It's not a struggle anymore. And then sometimes, when you reversed cancer, when you are in healing, in the what we call management phase, okay, then you can sometimes break this intermittent fasting and eat later, maybe once a week. It's not a problem. If you healed cancer, if you reversed gut permeability, if you don't have autoimmunity anymore, if you don't have inflammation in your body anymore, not a problem at all. So that was...
Yeah, beautiful. And the same, another question from Snow Bear about the diet also. Do you use Paleolithic ketogenic diet or meat fat only diet? And maybe help people understand the difference first.
Yeah, you see, well, Paleolithic ketogenic diet, PKD, is defined, this term is defined by Paleomedicina in Hungary, a company that I learned a lot from. They have two different two different flavors of it, if you want. One of them, it's including some vegetables, some green vegetables, and another one without. Okay, so what I'm doing, I'm not using any on our course, on our boot camp, because we're working with very serious conditions like brain tumors. We really want to be sure, and we really want to be sure that we avoid all the possible sources of inflammation and autoimmunity. And so we are going back to the evolutionary physiology of human body, as close as possible to what is very easily digestible and what creates no inflammation. That's meat and fat, basically only, and water. And then we use also, use bone broth, we use internal organs. We're learning all the time, and we PKD is defined like 2-to-1 on fat and protein. Sometimes it's better to do 1.5-to-1. So we are not counting calories. We are learning to control the ratio of fat to protein in the what we call dry matter. And it's a question of experience. We learn it normally during the first month. Yeah. So.
Very well.
And
okay,
we call it, just let me say that I call it essential ketogenic, which means that we only use essential macronutrients and essential micronutrients, nothing else. Then we also have, yeah?
Well, yeah, you answered the question of Eric pretty extensively already. Yeah? How does a person know if they are healing and reversing cancer? For the people watching, they can scroll a bit back when you watch the replay.
Yeah, basically,
it is the part where you spoke about control pause of 60. So I think you covered that nicely already. Yeah. So to summarize, Misha, because I see we have been talking for 1 hour and a half. I think it's been a good overview. The basically you don't leave people alone. You mess with their breathing, you mess with their eating, you mess with their mental state and meditation, but all in a good way, all in a way that basically creates this environment. But there's so many different angles, there's so much knowledge. So maybe to the last question, how does one get started? I see a button below there, a free 30 minutes. Is that to start?
Absolutely, absolutely. You see, the first thing, and let me post it. I have it here. That's my, I call it call to action. Um, the first thing I want to tell you. So if you have, if you are if you are uncertain or unsure, or you really don't know what to do and you need some advice, you can. I give people a free 30 minutes conference call, which is free. I just posted it in the chat, a link for that, or you use this green button here. Diagnosed with a brain tumor, book a free 30 minutes call with me. That's the thing. And then I want you guys to also to look. I have an article that I wrote. If you want to look at it, it's an article about interconnection between breathing and nutrition and how it works, how it creates a synergetic effect, basically. And it's I think it's crucial for us, for all of us, to understand, because you see, breathing and nutrition, that's one of the most crucial aspects of our life. We love to eat, and we eat every day, and we definitely also love to breathe. We cannot survive without eating. Well, we can survive without eating for like 30 or 40 days, but we cannot survive without breathing more than 40 seconds. Many of us, we collapse after 40 seconds. So it's very crucial to understand how these ways of getting energy into our body are connected together. And that's an article that I wrote. So basically, that's the place to start. And then we also have, I want to give you a link to the landing page that and there's a lot of aspects of what we are doing on this page. And this page about glioblastoma multiforme. That's I just so yeah. So you can read a lot about how we're working in our boot camp. So that's a place to start. And if you really want to know more and you want to have your questions answered, so guys, please reach out to me, and it's a free 30 minutes call, and then maybe we can get inspired. You inspire me, I inspire you. Okay? Absolutely. So, yeah.
Well, Misha, thank you very much for this webinar, for this overview. And I would say to the people who joined us, thank you for watching. Thank you for the questions. And I guess we see each other next week.
I hope so too. Guys, thank you for joining us. And so remember that we are running those webinars every Tuesday. Remember, it's always live. You can always also watch a replay of the webinar, but we don't run recorded webinars. We run it live because we believe that the human touch, it's a prerequisite for health. And how do we start? We start on connecting with each other online, listening to each other, being inspired, and that's what I call human touch. So please don't underestimate the power of human touch. Also in your families. There's a lot of interesting things here, and we can talk a lot, both Jacob and me, about those things. So that's exactly why we're doing it every week. Okay, thank you for joining. Yeah. Have a nice evening where it's evening. Have a nice day where it's a day. See you next week, guys.
Bye.